It all happened in a Nova Scotian bell maker's shop, where the bell maker there was not just a bell maker, but probably the most renowned bell maker in all of the world. He made big bells, but he didn't make the bells that were shaped like this. He made what was called a jingle bell. You know, round bell with a small piece to tie onto a shoe or a lace or over doors, with the small little piece of silver inside. So they rang. Ga-ding, 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 ga-ding. And he made big bells. Ga-ding, 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 ga-ding. He made small bells. Ga-ding, 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 ga-ding. He made bells of all sizes. He was even known to make the bells. Not just the bells, but the bells that went on the harness of the sleigh that the reindeer pulled. The famous sleigh of Santa Claus. Well, the season came, and the bell maker finished up his bells, and he finished up using all of his silver, except for one tiny piece, and he thought, well, I can just save it and melt it down. Then he had an idea. He took that tiny piece of silver, and he took his smallest hammer, and he started tinking it out over the anvil. So that's what they call a tin worker, a tinker. And he tinked it out flat, and he tinked it out. And he cut out the bell carefully, taking all the extra silver, rolling it up, and making a small clapper. Now the clapper is the tiny piece that goes inside the bell to make it sound. Then he carefully, ever so carefully, rolled that tiny piece of silver together and made the tiniest Christmas bell ever, smaller than a pea, the size of a mustard seed. This bell was tiny, and he named him Ned. The littlest jingle bell. You couldn't even hear him, he was so small. For the sound was muffled out of your fingertips. Well, the bell maker was quite proud of his achievement, and he put him on the shelf, and he put a piece of glass in front of him that magnified Ned, and he polished him and shined him. And people would come by, and they'd look at Ned, and they'd carefully pick him up, and they'd shake him and listen for a sound, and carefully put him back over. Well, as the season passed, the people bought all the big bells, the medium bells, the small bells. And on the day of Christmas Eve, all the bells were sold. All the bells, that is, except for Ned, the littlest jingle bell. Well, as the bell maker closed up shop and turned out the lights, he turned around and said, "Good night, Ned. Better luck next year." And as the bell maker went upstairs, he saw the last candle go out. Ned was dejected. Why couldn't he be a bell for somebody? He was tiny, but he was a bell. Suddenly he heard a jingling in the sky. Ching, 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 ching. And he heard the pawing of hoofs on the roof. And he knew who it was. He'd heard the legends, he'd heard the stories, and the bell maker's candle came on. The bell maker came down the stairs with his candle in hand and candle holder, opened the door, and allowed Santa in. "Hello, bell maker!" And the bell maker said, "Santa, it's good to see you." So, "I'm glad to see you. I was over Lake Michigan, and I think I dropped a bell off Donner's harness. I need her one to replace it with tonight." He said, "Santa, to be honest, I only have one bell left, and he's probably too small." And Santa said, "Oh, no bell is too small." Upon hearing that, Ned started to shine. He rolled himself around on the little piece of felt that he was on and polished himself and dusted himself off, because he knew that there was something special. He was saved for the best job of all, to be the best bell of all. And the bell maker led Santa into the shop. He said, "This bell might be too small." And again Santa said, "No bell is ever too small." And he picked up Ned, and he placed him on Santa's white glove. And Santa laughed and chuckled and rolled Ned from hand to hand, going, "Ho, ho, ho, ho. Why, this is the cutest bell I've ever seen! Ho, 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 ho. But you're right, he is too small." And handed him back to the bell maker. The bell maker said goodbye to Santa. Santa said goodbye to the bell maker. The bell maker tossed Ned back up on the shelf and went back to bed. No one quite knows what happened to Ned. Maybe he fell between a crack in the shelf. it's hard to tell with a bell that small. There's one thing we do know for sure. Ned was just too darn small.